Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show. Today is Thursday, June 4th, 2015. Joining me as always at the end of the week, but not quite the end of the week, Duane, Generalissimo Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show. How are you doing today, sir?
I am just as prepared as Marie Harf at a State Department briefing. That's how good I am.
Wow. Talk about a low bar, Duane, Generalissimo Patterson. Now, tomorrow, we should mention this right now. Tomorrow, I'll actually be filling in for Hugh.
Yes, you will.
And I hope to be a little bit more prepared than Marie Harf at a State Department briefing.
As do I.
That will be your job as well as mine.
Here's to actually tell you what's going on, because we've spent exactly zero time prepping for the show tomorrow, but
or today,
or today exactly. The reason I wanted you to do tomorrow is because there is a normal Friday where we would have Chuck Todd, and you know Chuck Todd, and actually would be kind of a fun conversation to have, right?
Oh yeah.
Except it's not happening.
Oh.
The reason it's not happening isn't because of you. It's because this is the last day on NBC's calendar where, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, but they're preempting Meet the Press this week for, I don't know, golf or something, but they're not doing Meet the Press this weekend, so it's an off weekend for Chuck. So he's like, screw it. I'm not doing any more prep, or I'm not doing any more publicity for it. So it's we'll have him on next week, but you're not hosting next week. So we got to figure out what to do tomorrow.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. I just feel so. I feel so
jilted.
Jilted. Yes. Jilted is a good word for it. Exactly.
But at least you're not as jilted as, I don't know, Sweden is after giving all that money, or to the Clinton Foundation, or
I don't know. They're not jilted. They got exactly what they wanted.
Actually, they did. There was a quo there, wasn't there, with the quid pro? They did get what they were after. I guess they didn't get jilted after all. Who has gotten jilted with? I know who got jilted with the Clintons. It's the little children that aren't going to be able to have their little festival at Roosevelt Island next week, right?
Yeah,
they're the ones that got jilted.
Kicked off.
It's the kids. The kids that Hillary's always been the champion for. The little children.
Think of the children, Duane.
That's who got jilted.
That is who got jilted. Indeed, that's who got jilted. Think of the children. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to think of the children. So, yeah, as I've been putting it for quite some time now, what you've got with this Clinton Foundation is you've got Quid, you've got Quo, and a couple of old pros in between, Duane. I mean, that's...
Ed Morrissey, I'm sure that there is part of the Clinton Foundation that has benefited some poor people in Haiti and other parts of the world. I'm sure that has happened, right?
Well, I mean, depending on the year, you'll see pass-through rates of somewhere between 6 and 15%, which is terrible for a charity. But yeah, some of that money is going somewhere.
I'm sure they have done some good work.
They have done some good work, yes.
In that same phrase, I am absolutely certain that Al Capone made at least one dining room table set and sold it that was probably functional.
Probably. Although right? I don't know if it wasn't, if you'd want to go back to the complaints department, quite frankly. I'd say that the customer satisfaction feedback rate was probably 100% no matter what. Yeah.
Absolutely. They got no returns. They had a no return policy. But what I'm saying is,
it's kind of like a vote in ISIS land.
I'm sure somewhere in Al Capone business world there was some contributions made to the economy. I'm sure there was.
Oh, someone's economy.
Exactly.
Sure, yeah, you bet. There was a lot of contributions made to the economy.
But I mean, somewhere in the Capone thing, there was at least some normal commerce going on, even if it was a shell.
Sure,
there was some commerce going on.
Right.
That was above some, right?
Yeah. Remember the beginning of the Godfather. Yeah.
But it was a criminal syndicate, correct?
Right. Yeah.
What is the Clinton Foundation?
It's a great question because charity doesn't really describe it. And I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what exactly to call this thing. But charitable foundation really doesn't cover it, does it? Because there are so many different things that were going on here.
I would use the C word, but it's a syndicate.
Well, it's at least a slush fund, which is how Bill Allison from the Sunshine Foundation described it. And it's only gotten worse. I mean, the revelations on this have only gotten worse.
The New York Times, the Washington Times, the Washington Post, the Independent Business Journal, right?
Independent Business Times.
Sorry, Independent Business Times.
Which I think is association.
And the Wall Street Journal, so far this week alone, have all done independent stories that have nothing to do with Clinton Cash and Pete Schweitzer's book, by the way. But all 5 of them have independent stories about what crooks these people are and what they've done.
Don't you find it interesting?
To Qatar, to Sweden, to you name it. To FIFA. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff breaking on these guys.
Don't you find it interesting that David Sirota has been all over this?
I sure do.
Doing good work too. I mean, doing good work. I don't want to.
It was grand reporting. It
was
on the after show last night. I read darn near the whole thing.
Very good. Well, it's not the first one. He's had 2 or 3 of these things break where he's going back through the Clinton Foundation financials, where he's going through State Department approvals. I mean, the thing this week was, a couple days ago, was the fact that chemical arms sales to Middle Eastern countries went up 50%, or approvals for those sales went up 50%.
Chemical weapons, and not just the country made a contribution to the slush fund Swedish division that Bill Clinton set up, and not only did Ericsson, the telecom giant in Sweden that had so much to gain possibly in Iran by cutting a deal and going around sanctions and setting up mobile service to Iran. Ericsson gives $750,000 to Bill Clinton. On another aspect, the chemical weapons manufacturer, the tear gas manufacturer that Egypt used under Mubarak's desperate attempt to hang on to power, the tear gas manufacturer gave a speech or paid for a speech for Bill Clinton of $250,000. The tear gas manufacturer. Can you imagine that speech? Hi, how you doing? This is Bill Clinton. Of all the tear gas companies in the world I could give a speech to, I couldn't think of a better one than this tear gas company right here. You guys care for the environment better than any other tear gas manufacturer I've ever seen. The smoke that comes out of this tear gas canister, it dissipates very quickly, and it doesn't raise the CO2 in the atmosphere. It's an environmentally conscious tear gas.
Let me just quote the great Roy Orbison on this. I'll be crying.
He accepted a speech invite from a tear gas manufacturer, Ed Morrissey, the former president of the United States.
And what's interesting about this, right, is the policy at the time, whether you agreed with it or not, right, the policy, and a lot of us didn't agree with it at the time, the policy of the United States was to support the demonstrators against the regimes that we're talking about. And so what you've got here, and this is where I think you've got the closest thing to a quid pro quo.
And the policy only changed when...
Well, it didn't even change. Well, it changed when, I don't even think it ever changed, honestly. I don't recall when it changed. But at least during this period of time where Hillary Clinton is, on one hand, pushing the Obama line that we're in solidarity with the people on the streets. We want democratic reforms and people power and et cetera, et cetera. She was taking money from the regimes that these people were demonstrating against and approving sales of chemical arms that were being used against the same demonstrators. Now, that to me is about as close as a quid pro quo as you're going to get without an email message that says, hey, if you send me this amount of money, I'll approve that sale. Because this is something, these are decisions that don't fit in with the policies that supposedly she was enforcing.
Right. So
they contradict them.
You're right. U.S. policy didn't change. But at the State Department, they quit enforcing and living up to the official policy that they had been upholding. And the reason that the State Department said, well, we're going to look the other way in this case, happened to coincide with campaign dollars, or not campaign dollars, donation dollars that went to the Clinton Foundation. It's just staggering. And after all the media that has come out on this, and again, the vast right wing conspiracy that consists of the Washington Post, the New York Times, all this stuff that's coming out, and the Clintons still refuse to accept that there's anything being done wrong. They can't even recognize that there is an appearance of impropriety. To them, there isn't even a whiff of odor here of corruption, because they're the Clintons. They're above all this. Bill Clinton still's got to pay the bills. Would you take any more money, Mr. President? Don't you think we ought to stop doing it? Oh no, got to pay the bills.
Got to pay the bills. Got to pay the bill. Not the
They
bills.
still don't
Not the
think
bills. You got this wrong.
Pay the bill.
You got to pay the bill. Yeah.
They
Gotta pay the
don't
bill.
believe they're doing anything wrong. Bill Clinton, late last week, maybe early this week, I forget the day, but he was asked about this somewhere along the way, and his attitude was, "Oh, there's no quid pro quo. Yeah, I mean, it's not like Hillary is the president or anything. I mean, come on. You can say that maybe they thought they were going to get something in return, but what am I going to do? I wasn't president. Hillary wasn't president. There's nothing she could do. Come on."
Come on, man. Yeah, that's an ESPN come on, man moment if I ever heard one. Come on, man.
Dude, really? Yeah. Or yeah, it's like the Amy Poehler Seth Meyer routine on Saturday Night Live when they did Weekend Update, when they did the the really question mark.
Yeah. Really?
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 Yeah. You really want to try that? Honestly, really?
Or Cameron Diaz on Bad Teacher. Seriously?
Seriously.
Seriously? Yeah. I actually have that on the array someplace, but I got it turned out, so I don't want to go searching for it.
We now have a 10-person field thus far on the GOP side, and that doesn't even include Jeb Bush. Believe it or not, did you think, Ed Morrissey, at this stage of the game that we would be 10 candidates in and Jeb Bush would not be one of them officially?
Officially, I actually don't really. We know who's going to be running. We may not know everybody who's going to be running,
but he was the
people
first
who
one
are, we know.
He was the first one basically to say, "Yeah, I'm in. I'm just not making it official yet, but yeah, I'm in." But I'm just surprised.
I don't know what he's waiting for, honestly. I mean, I'm not sure what he's waiting for at this point.
I don't either.
There's no point in holding, other than the tax issues. Maybe he's waiting after Q2 is over. He's going to sign out and go for Q3, because that'll be the first of next month.
You would think you'd be able to staff up at this point.
You would think,
but he's just not apparently wanting to do it. But
I think it's about being able to raise money for the PAC. It's being able to,
Sure.
I mean, there are reasons for it, but we're coming to the end of the usefulness, I think, of that thing, and he's not gaining traction through it. So I think he'd be smarter just to dump it now and make his run. But what did you think about Rick Perry today? Now, I didn't get a chance to see the speech, but Perry's
most underrated candidate of our side in this cycle. Rick Perry obviously had the moment which makes everybody cringe that will never be able to be lived down. He was on who knows what painkillers. He had back issues. He was not 100%. Everybody knows he wasn't 100%.
Right.
He's healthy now. And honestly, if you listen to him, there is few people better at retail politics than Rick Perry. I mean,
I agree. The guy is tremendous at retail politics.
And he is really a likable guy.
Very likable.
He's got a lot going for him. Do I see a pathway for him? Hell, I don't know at this point.
I wrote about this week. First off, I like the fact that we've got a lot of really talented people in this race. I think people are wringing their hands over. I think they've got this backwards. They're worried about how the debates are going to work if you've got this many candidates. I would say debates are worthless anyway. Figure out a way to accommodate the field that you've got, rather than try to force the field that you've got into some useless
format that's not going to tell you anything anyway.
Yeah, unless you only have 2 or 3 people on the stage, that debate format doesn't work. It really doesn't. All it does is generate quips and one-liners, which is exactly what happened last time around.
If you're going to do this and you've got 15 people that are going to be, on the stage as viable candidates or professed candidates, then fine. You do a
forum where one person at a time is talking, and that's it.
If you've got limited amount of TV times you're going to do, fine. Then you do kind of a magazine format. You do kind of an overview of what they all stand for, and you do it that way. And then you do the extended thing for online consumptions. and you put it on Netflix. I mean, if it's going to
Yeah.
take 3-4 hours to have this thing, then you go
Or
3-4 hours.
Yahoo
and you
live
put it-
stream. Hey, look, Yahoo is going to live stream an NFL broadcast this
Exactly.
year. They're not going to have it on one of the network channels. Fortunately for Yahoo, it's just going to be the Bills versus the Jags, so it won't tax their servers. I mean, the demand for that is going to be pretty low, so you'll get a chance to watch it without too many skips.
The people that want to see it are going to see it. The
Yeah.
people that don't want to see it aren't.
Right. So do that early, you know. Have a week where you have an hour a night or something like that, and you invite only a couple of candidates, and you give them each a half an hour of time. You could do what? You could do 10 candidates that way. If you decided to do 2 hours a night, you could do 20 candidates that way in a single week. And that way people could come and go. There isn't this need to.
There are ways to do this.
Right. This is the type of creative out of the box thinking that needs to happen when you have a field both this large and this credible. I mean, most of the people, there's a couple of people in there who probably aren't going to last very long, and I don't need to belabor who they are, so we won't mention their names.
But the larger point here is, let's look at the energy and let's look at which party right now looks like America.
Yeah.
Compared to what the perception is. You know, the perception is, of course, the Republican Party is the old white guy party, right?
Right.
That's always been the perception. And the Democrats were always the young, hip, cool, new, progressive, everything, looking forward, versus the old, stale white guys that just want to say no all the time. Now, GOP side, we
are the knights who say no.
Exactly. So we have Rick Perry, who is white, but he's, what, 50? How old is he?
No, I think he's 61, 62, I think.
Is he 61? I didn't think he was that old. Okay,
I believe so.
We've got Marco Rubio, who is...
I'll double check that while you're working that down. Marco Rubio is 43, I believe.
43, and he is a Cuban descent, Latino. And then we've got Ted Cruz, who is Cuban
Perry's 65,
Canadian.
by the way. Perry is 65. He was 61 the last time around.
Oh, okay.
So he's 65.
Ted Cruz is a Cuban Canadian.
And I think he's 40 or 41.
41. You've got Carly Fiorina, who's not exactly an old white guy. Carly Fiorina. We've got John Kasich, who is white, but he's
late 50s.
Late 50s. You know, he's not that long in the tooth.
Scott Walker's in his
Scott Walker,
mid to late 40s.
Yeah, he's like 47, I think,
something like that.
You've got George Pataki, who is an old white guy.
Yeah.
George Pataki.
Yeah, I don't think Pataki's a serious contender.
He's an announced candidate.
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham. I don't think Lindsey Graham's 60 yet, is he?
Wasn't he a Vietnam era vet? He might be. He's younger than McCain. Maybe he was more in the 80s.
Who isn't? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
No, I think he was in the 80s. I think I'm wrong about that. I think he's probably in his late 50s or early 60s.
Okay, Rand Paul, who is?
Rand Paul's 52 years old. Same age as me.
Okay, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9. I've got 9 of the 10 that are announced. Who am I forgetting? Who has actually announced? Who am I forgetting? Huckabee.
Yeah. Again, another one who's probably not going anywhere in this race.
No, but he's announced, and
well, look, while you're running that down, and I'll tell you why. Because Huckabee's the past, and Jeb Bush really actually is as well. Rick Perry is an interesting candidate because he is both the past and the present. He was a governor in 2001. So he was, his governorship was during the Bush years, but he's run for office and won office in the post-Bush years as well. So he knows the electorate as it is, and he can actually speak to both the establishment, the older establishment, and I think to some extent the grassroots, although maybe not the younger grassroots in the Republican Party. I think there's room for Perry to maneuver here as long as he doesn't make a mistake. Because for him, more than anybody else, it's got to be mistake free.
He has to run a mistake-free thing, because
he does.
if he throws a spoke again this time, it's going to just tie it back to the last cycle, and everybody's going to go, he's fine most of the time, but can we afford him to throw a spoke?
Right.
And and he's
fair, and
he's
it's a fair point. It is a fair. As much as I like Rick Perry, it is a fair point.
It is an absolute fair point because you don't want a guy who's in there and in there and in there, and all of a sudden just completely short circuits and throws a sprocket. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize one other thing. I like Rick Perry. I also like Marco Rubio. I like Scott Walker.
I like them all.
I like most of them.
Well, I like
and I like the rest of them, but not necessarily as presidential candidates. So I mean, talking about as presidential candidates.
Right. Now,
yeah,
Huckabee is 63.
Huckabee's
he's younger than Hillary.
Is he younger than Perry? I don't think he is, but I'll double check that. Give me just a second, and I'll tell you.
Democratic side.
Oh no, he is. He's actually only 59 years old.
Okay, so he's 59.
I would have actually guessed older than that.
Okay, so of the 10 that are in thus far, Rick Perry is the oldest at 65, right?
Right, and he'll be 67 when the election at the
I'm
time of the general election.
Right now.
Yeah. Or 66. He'll be 66. Excuse me.
Madam Secretary Taya Rodham Leone, Hillary Clinton, is 67 right now.
She'll be actually 69 at the time of the election.
Correct.
We miss Bobby Jindal.
He hasn't announced yet, has he?
I don't think he has.
I don't think he's actually had the announcement.
But I mean, he's another guy who's young. He's
dynamic, and he's not an old white guy.
Not an old white guy. I still think there's room to. I mean, this is just pure speculation on my part. I haven't heard nothing about this, but I think there's still room for Susana Martinez or Nikki Haley to throw their hat in the ring. You've got Rick Snyder up in Michigan, who's probably not going to go very far if he does throw his hat in the ring, but nonetheless, there's at least a possibility there.
You know who we forgot? Ben Carson.
Ben Carson.
He also announced. So that's 11 in the race, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I actually think it's higher than that, but
well, it's going to be higher. I mean, again, we don't have Jeb Bush on those.
How
lists
about Donald Trump? How old is Donald Trump?
He's probably he's in his 60s, but he hasn't announced yet. He has not announced yet,
and he won't.
and I'm holding on to that dream.
He
He's
won't.
not going to announce.
He won't.
Now, Hillary is 67 currently. You have Bernie Sanders, who is. How old is Bernie Sanders?
He's older than she is. He's in his 70s.
72?
72, I believe.
Okay. You have who just got in yesterday? Lincoln Chafee just got in yesterday.
Lincoln Chafee and Martin O'Malley.
Lincoln Chafee is
in his mid-60s, I believe. He's still younger than Hillary. I think he's 62, 63.
Uh-huh.
If I remember correctly.
And then
he's running for the 1976 nomination, though. I mean, with the metric system.
And he's running for the metric system, absolutely, because that's the most important thing. It will save the economy, don't you know?
I got to tell you, I wrote a post about that. I had no idea it was going to get as many comments as it did. Actually, it was more of a just a way to have a laugh at that. But who runs on the metric system, for crying out loud? It's almost performance art. It's almost Pat Paulson level performance art. And the only person who's not in on the joke, apparently, is Lincoln Chafee.
I was unaware that the Bureau of Standards and Measures was a cabinet level position. I was unaware of that. So, and the Republicans were branded as the
out-of-touch party.
The out-of-touch condom, we're going to go after your contraception department. You remember how George Stephanopoulos dropped that whole bomb on us, and all of a sudden we were they're going to take away your birth control?
Yep. Yes, I remember
it. And none of our people had anything to say about it, and it's like, where is this coming from? But that became the meme for an entire presidential cycle. And Lincoln Chafee wants to bring us to the metric system because that's the only way to save the economy. So yeah, Lincoln Chafee. You know, Don Willis is the justice out of Texas. Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah, I love following him on
Twitter yesterday. He said, "I wouldn't touch that campaign with a 3.048 metric or meter pole." It was great. So Marty O'Malley, he's the kid of the bunch. He's what?
55? No, he's 55. He's in his 50s.
And he's the kid in the group.
Yeah, and he's kidding himself if he thinks he's going to get any traction. His only hope is that she implodes. And honestly, he's the Democrats' only hope as insurance against an implosion by Hillary Clinton.
The only other one that's not announced that actually, believe it or not, if he were to announce today that he were going to run, or next week that he were going to run, he actually could get the nomination just out of sympathy alone. You know who this is?
Who?
Joe Biden.
Well, he'd get a bump.
He would get a bump.
He
absolutely
honestly,
would get a bump.
Honestly, I mean, just it's what an awful thing. I mean, this guy's life. I mean, he's had a charmed life politically, but personally,
he's gone through it.
He's gone through a lot. I feel really bad for the Bidens today.
I don't wish that on anybody.
Me either.
Obviously.
Me either.
But what I'm saying is if he were to say that, next week after actually the service is tomorrow.
Yeah, because he's lying in state in Delaware today,
yes.
right? Beau Biden is,
yes.
yeah.
And they're going to actually have the service tomorrow.
Yeah. But
if he were to come out next week and say, as a tribute to my son and my family and whatever else, this is what I think I need to do, and he were to throw his hat into the race, who's going to say, no, you can't do it, you're old, you're stupid? Who right now is going to look at
nobody?
No,
not for a month.
Right.
and then let the games begin,
But could he do some damage in that month?
Nah. Because I don't think anybody would take it seriously. That's the thing about Joe Biden. You can have him around, but nobody takes him seriously.
Democrats, you're worried about the seriousness of a party and a movement that is willing to nominate a crook.
The female Richard Nixon. Look, I'll tell you one thing, though, about Joe Biden. If it wasn't for the fact that he was about 10 years too old for it and the fact that he has no control over his mouth.
He would be the Al Gore of this time and get within a whisker of the president.
I don't think anybody in the Democratic Party right now, and I'm including Jim Webb in that, even though Jim Webb is more or less retired from politics, although he's talking about running for the presidency. I don't think anybody speaks to the old Democratic coalition better than Joe Biden. You go back and take a look at that 2012 convention speech that he gave. That was
Catholic
the best
labor. He had
best
all
speech
of the traditional voting blocks.
That was the best
in his
speech.
pocket.
It was the best speech of the convention. This is a guy who is old school Democratic Party, even though he's serving a much more progressive agenda. At least this is a guy who knows how to operate as an old school Democrat.
Of the people that I mentioned on the GOP side and the people I mentioned on the Democratic side, which are actually looking forward and are monochromatic, and which ones are actually looking backwards and are monochromatic?
Well, most of the Republican field is looking forward. Most of these people are current governors. A few are current senators. You got one who's just a very recently retired governor. That's Rick Perry.
And they've all got a vision for what they want to do different in this country.
Right. I mean, this is the problem, right? Because you've got essentially Hillary Clinton is essentially the John McCain of 2016. She's coming at the end of what is becoming an increasingly unpopular presidency, increasingly unpopular agenda, and she's the continuity candidate, and she's older than dirt, politically speaking.
And is starting to come in and run for the third term, that's presiding over an economy that just went into a negative growth over the first quarter.
Well, yeah, but I think that's actually going to bounce back in Q2. I don't think it's a recession. I don't think it's a recession, but it's not good.
I don't think it is either, but
it's not good.
6.5 years into a presidency, and all of a sudden we're back into negative growth.
Yeah. Well, and this happened last year too. I mean, this is something that's been bouncing around. There's no momentum in this thing. You get occasional spikes upward. You get occasional spikes downward, but it's been basically a stagnation economy over the last 6 years. Well, let's see. Yeah, it'll be 6 years this month, actually, because the recovery was June 2009.
Right.
And
right.
So, yeah, this is not an inspiring economy. There is plenty of room here, by the way, for Republicans to make inroads because of that fact. But they have to actually get themselves out of their comfort zone to do that. Now, I know, Duane, you're champing at the bit because you got a lot of stuff for tonight's show. So
you want me to tell you what's coming up tonight?
I do want to tell you. I do want you to tell me what's coming up tonight.
Mark Stein, columnist of the World,
of course,
keeps his normal Thursday appointment. Of course,
awesome.
And then it's been a while since we talked to a senator, so we'll just pick up senator at random and talk to Roy Blunt of Missouri.
Excellent.
Just a little throw in, just a little appetizer. And then, since we're talking to one senator, might as well talk to a second senator. So we're going to talk to Mitch McConnell. You think the trade thing might come up, or anything else
Possibly.
that might have come up in the last week?
NSA?
Yeah, we may talk to Mitch McConnell a little bit about some stuff. And then John Kasich's going to join us in the top of the second hour. Governor of Ohio, presidential candidate. I've heard.
I've heard that too.
Then we're going to be talking to another senator named Lindsey Graham. Because, Lindsey Graham basically told everybody yesterday, I'm putting words in his mouth, but he basically said, look, if you don't want a war against the bad guys, don't vote for me. That's at least refreshingly honest, isn't it?
It really is, yes.
So that's got to be kind of fun to do. And then we're going to be talking to the editor of WriteRead.com, which basically used to be the aggregator that worked for Matt Drudge. A guy named Joseph Curl's going to be on today.
Oh, yeah, Joe Curl. Yeah, great.
Joe Curl's going to be on today, as will David Drucker of the Washington Examiner. So we got a full boat today.
Well, it sounds like a fine show. A fine show indeed, and that is indeed coming up in about 1 hour and 28 minutes. And you can watch this show, actually, on the Hugniverse, HUGHNIVERSE.com, the troll-free web surfing experience for Hugh Hewitt fans. I'm a member, and Duane's a member, and y'all should be members. And if you're not, don't be drinking your Dr. Pepper until you are. But, if for those people out there who still aren't members of the Hugniverse, Duane, they can certainly catch this show on the AM dial. But what happens if they can't find it on the AM dial?
Well, clearly, you need to go find a Democratic presidential candidate, an old white person who is a forward-looking person to convince that station that tomorrow is going to be the day that you're going to do this. You got to be progressive. You got to be forward-looking because the Democrats are so forward-looking now and stuff.
I was actually going to say check it out on the metric system to see if you can find it on the metric system dial. But
a fine way to do it.
You could do that too.
If you can't do it on the traditional AM radio dial, do it on the AM metric dial.
That's right. Go for the kilometric hertz scale there. But look, if you can't do it that way either, you can always go to HughHewitt.com and listen to the audio stream. And but you should be on the Hugniverse, man. You should be on the Hugniverse. All right, Duane, Generalissimo Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show. I'll be on with you tomorrow, so we're going to have some fun tomorrow night on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Absolutely. Say hi to Salena and Mitch.
I will definitely do that. Thank you very much, sir.
See you guys.
See ya. Duane, Generalissimo Patterson of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been my guest for this part of the Ed Morrissey Show. And right now we're going to go ahead and give Salena a call as soon as we look up Selena's number to give her a call. And that is going to be forthcoming right now. Well, let's see. There we go. We were going to try to get Salena on Tuesday, but it just didn't work out. She is on the road, but we're going to talk to her about what the most important issue of the 2016 presidential campaign is going to be, and Selena's going to tell us about that when we get her on the line. And thank you, Bob Knox, for noticing that I do say champing at the pit.
This is Salena.
Hi, Salena. It's Ed Morrissey. How are you?
I'm swell. How are you?
I am doing good. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thanks for being on with us today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, so you are...
If you lose me, call me back. You have to call me back.
I will. If I lose you,
right
I will definitely...
on the air.
I will... you know how I do my show. That's how I do the show. I do it live on the air, you know?
And I will cry on the air.
Oh, well, we don't want that. We can't have that. We don't want people crying on the air. Not unless they're Democrats, Salena, and I know better than that. So
in New Hampshire, Democrats in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
crying.
I want Democrats in New Hampshire crying. I want Democrats in Iowa crying. In fact, I wouldn't mind sort of that Walter Mondale-esque map in 1984 with lots of wailing and gnashing of teeth in 49 states.
That's a lot of wailing.
That would be a lot of wailing, and it's pretty unrealistic in this cycle, but hey, a guy can dream. But one of the ways that you can get to that point is by knowing what the real issues are going to be with the electorate, so you can calculate your message for the electorate.
Absolutely.
What is You wrote about this on Sunday. What is
I
the
did.
big issue?
Well, I think the across the board issue is this inability to have been able to effectively deal with the economy. And what I'm talking about, and I outlined that in my column on Sunday, you have this foundry in Pennsylvania, but it can be anywhere. And it's in downtown Pittsburgh. And it has been manufacturing steel for the railroad industry since before the Civil War. They make couplers. Couplers are basically saved hundreds of thousands of brakesmen's lives because it kept brakesmen from having to put to put the train cars manually together. So
Yeah, they just slam together and lock, right?
Right, exactly. It was like a big Lego. So this company has been there forever. They fallen in with all the compliances of EPA in terms of any kind of pollution that they were emitting. But the neighborhood that they're in, it's called Lawrenceville, has gone from being a working class, blue collar, inner city neighborhood to this trendy upscale neighborhood. So these little boarding houses, these little row houses that for 10 years ago sold for $30,000 are now going for $700,000. And you have doctors, the intellectual elite has sort of, staked out this ground. And now they are effectively trying to push them out of town. Now, it strikes me as incredibly ironic as the same day that they are having this big conference in the city with all these Nordic countries about, urban sustainability and my favorite, carbon footprint transference, which means walking. The health department has decreed that they need to cut 77% of their production, or they're going to close them down. Now, here's a plant that employs about 500 people, 60% of them which are black, and they make a nice living wage, about $30 an hour, and they're going to all lose their jobs. Now, these are the same intellectual elites that are out there behind the people who want to push small businesses and businesses like McDonald's and Walmart to pay a $15 minimum wage. Well, there's a reason why they're screaming about a minimum wage. It's to hide the fact that the jobs they're driving out of town because it doesn't fit with their sort of new urban footprint and new city planning. These jobs, you listen to Hillary or O'Malley or Sanders or any Republican out there running. They're running on manufacturing jobs,
right.
Jobs where people can make things, can make a good living wage. Well, the Democrats are not going to be able to run on that because they push these businesses out of business.
Yeah, they're the ones that are regulating the businesses
They're
into
regulating them to death.
Right.
They're just saying, you
I think we might be losing Salena here, and if we do, we'll wait a minute and give her a call back. But yeah, I mean you can't run on expanding middle class jobs and work and manufacturing jobs while you're regulating the manufacturers out of existence. And yeah, we did lose her. We'll go ahead and give her a call right back and see if we can't get her back on the line. And it's a great point. Most elections, the economy is going to be the issue.
Anyway,
as you were saying.
Well, I mean, that was a really long answer to your question. The crux, sort of, the centerpiece of this election is how do we balance what is safe for our cities and make cities a place where people want to come and live, with also the ability to people find a decent job where you manufacture things. And it's the thing that we haven't adapted for in the last 10 years in this economy.
Yeah.
And it's a big problem. It's a bigger problem for the Democrats right now. As odd as it sounds, the Republicans are the party for the working class.
Well, they could be the party for the working class, right? They could be.
Right. They have the opportunity. They have the opportunity to do that.
That's
It's right in front of them. If they're smart, they'll take them up on it.
This is part of the frustration that I see, though, is that you have the opportunity to go into these working class neighborhoods, neighborhoods that they lost in the last couple of election cycles, in part because there was a lot of unique aspects to the last two presidential election cycles. Barack Obama really honestly being the most unique aspect of them all. Very inspirational. Whether or not you each individual out there listening to this was personally inspired. And you're talking about a lot of people who didn't normally vote, who were inspired to go out and vote for this guy, and then got an emotional attachment to that vote and stuck with him for a second term. He's off the ticket.
Right. I mean, I'm going to give Rice Freeman a little credit here. He has run in city neighborhoods in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh, and has won state elections, state legislative races, has dumped some money in them with talking to and winning over blue-collar voters.
Right.
And look at that race in Philadelphia. Her name escapes me right now. She's 27 years old, never involved in politics in her entire life. This is a Philadelphia city, state House seat, and a Republican hasn't won there since the 50s. And she ran and won. And how did she win? On jobs.
Yeah.
She won the union vote. She had union support. So, I mean, I think that needs to trickle up, and that's how a good populist movement always works, is those kinds of ideas and that kind of energy moves up the ladder, not down the ladder. And I think there's a couple guys out there that are running for president and running for senator, and running for, and will run for governor, that have these experiences, and that can talk about them and have proven vote getters in sort of those types of districts, but they have to talk about it, or those voters are going to sit home again. They're
going to have to go there. First off, they're going to have to get in those neighborhoods, right?
Well, Ryan did that. Paul Ryan did that. He was in eastern Ohio, northern Ohio, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Paul Ryan was very effective for Mitt Romney in those kinds of districts. Because, if you've ever been to Janesville, Wisconsin, that is not ruby red Republicanville. That's a blue-collar area.
Right. It's a blue-collar area, and it is, again, the type of district that used to be traditionally Democrat because of the Democratic Working Class Coalition back in the old Scoop Jackson days, but tended to be socially conservative, or at least socially on the conservative side, pro-family, pro-small business rather than pro-corporation, which is something I think the Republican Party doesn't make a distinction about and should. Those were your Reagan Democrats. Those were the people who came over because they were afraid that the Democratic Party was leaving them behind by running to the left. Well, the Democratic Party has run to the left, and they have left that field wide open. There was a couple of interesting articles. I'm sure you saw them, Salena, about, I think it was in the Washington Post. I think it was Chris Cillizza's, or maybe Philip Bump, that was going through and saying, actually, the Democratic Party has moved farther left and the Republicans have moved right. But there's still a gap in the middle. But a lot of that movement has been from the Democrats. And you've got Hillary Clinton in the race right now, trying to out-progressive Elizabeth Warren to keep her out of the race, which is pushing the party even farther to the left. It's like doubling down on what happened during the Obama administration. And she is not going to be the same kind of inspirational figure for people to go out and vote for as Barack Obama was in 2008 and 2012. So you have a huge opportunity here, and yet it's frustrating, Salena, and maybe you've got a better feel for this than I do, but you just don't hear Republicans talking to, or speaking to, I should say, the economic concerns of working class and middle class Americans, as much as you do hear them say things about, we're going to lower taxes on, we're going to lower corporate taxes, we're going to lower income taxes, we're going to cut this, we're going to cut that. And I think the only person, this is the reason why I voted for Rick Santorum in 2012's primary, is because Rick Santorum, in that cycle at least, was really the only one talking about revitalizing the manufacturing class by reintroducing, vocational schools that taught people really good earning skills like plumbing, like welding, like pipe fitting.
You have to remember 74% of the country still does not graduate from college.
Right, exactly.
That's the hard truth. 74%. Here's where I'm just going to disagree with you a little bit. I think we're just in a lag time right now in terms of the presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't it right now. Right now, you're just seeing these guys test out their message. I think, truthfully, in 2014, the Republicans are very good in talking about working class values and blue collar. And you saw them just run the tables on the Democrats in state house races, in local state races, in state senate races, in governor's races, in the House and the Senate. They were very effective. Right now, nobody knows what their message is because everybody's all over the place. They're testing things out, and people still aren't tuned in. I think after this summer, you're going to see a very large conversation about rebuilding the middle class and re-looking at what we do with our economy. We have not adapted to this economy at all.
No.
And we have to find a way to do that. And I think you will see more talk about that. And I actually think you're going to see someone that's very effective at talking about that is John Kasich. He's been incredibly successful about it in Ohio. I think Scott Walker can speak to it. I think that Jeb Bush can speak to it. Rick Santorum obviously can speak to it. He grew up and lived it.
Right.
And I think after this summer and after people start getting their groove on, right now it's sort of like puberty for them. Okay, it's kind of awkward things that people are just not on.
Yeah, we may have lost Salena again. Are you still there, Salena? We may lose her again, but we're going to bring her back on because I want to talk to her about her other piece, which is about Martin O'Malley. But I wanted to first ask her if she thought that Rick Perry... and then there it went. We'll try again. Don't forget that Salena is actually traveling back from Washington, D.C. She's driving, so she's going through some dead spots in cell coverage. So we'll try getting her back on here in just a second. I want to thank everybody for being with us today, by the way. And we are on the YouTube channel.
This is what happens when you drive through the mountains in Maryland.
Yeah, but then that's what puts you in touch with the little people. But I'm glad you brought up Maryland because I wanted to talk to you about your other story from the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah, my interview with Martin O'Malley.
Martin O'Malley. Now, this is a guy who was a member of the Democratic Leadership Conference. This was the centrist effort back in the day that pushed Bill Clinton forward. And now the way he's been talking, and certainly the way he governed in Maryland, is kind of the new leftish progressives that the DLC was designed to push back against. Who is Martin O'Malley?
It's so confusing. Well, that's exactly right. Who is Martin O'Malley? I mean, I've known this guy for 30 years, and the first time I met him, he was a very centrist, sort of typical Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin Democrat. Pretty Reagan in terms of pocketbook issues, and on social issues too. Didn't quite mesh with the left. And look, he thinks his only avenue is to go left and push Hillary left. It's a gamble, because, oh my God, how can you go left with Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean there is no left of Bernie Sanders. You pretty much drop off of the equator at that point.
Yeah, not unless you're really going for the international answer world can't wait vote, which is, just the thing that'll put you right over the top in a presidential election.
He is a proud socialist. I'm not saying that in a way that people would say, oh, Barack Obama's a socialist. No, he is a socialist.
He's a proclaimed, this is Bernie Sanders we're talking about now, a proclaimed socialist. But so O'Malley is going to go to Hillary's left the same way Bernie Sanders is. Why isn't anybody going to Hillary's right? That seems to be
I mean, I wish Jim Webb would step it up a little bit. To me, he's the most interesting Democrat running. He's your old-time traditional Democrat. He has 2 Purple Hearts, 3 tattoos. Was the Secretary of Navy. He was a former Republican. He became a Democrat when he became frustrated with the war in Iraq. And he won. He's the first guy that turned Virginia blue in 2006. I wouldn't necessarily say he won that race. I would say that George
Allen.
Oh my gosh,
George
Allen lost that race.
Yeah.
But he also shares sort of that populist influence that we've been talking about a lot. In that he by the time he left the Senate in 2013, there was nothing that Barack Obama did that he stood by.
Right.
He is a classic centrist Democrat, and he is very good on the stump. He was a combat Marine. He just has a great personal story. I just wish that he had a little more money behind him so that he could tell that story to make this race, to give everybody a position. You got left, and more left.
Yeah, but I mean, is it really a money issue? This is a guy who doesn't necessarily like campaigning. I mean, this is almost a Fred Thompson front porch campaign that Jim Webb is running. Not even running at the moment. It's more or less, I don't know, I think it's a state of being with Jim Webb.
Yeah, he's like William McKinley, except we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, we don't. Well, Fred Thompson tried it, right? Fred Thompson tried it. He was just going to have everybody out to Tennessee to talk to them, and it's just not the way it works.
No, it isn't the way it works. It's a shame because we've talked about this on the show before.
Yeah.
The Democrats have lost the white male vote. Period. Not working class, white male vote since LBJ, and it has escalated with each president. Each time a Democrat won, they lose more white male votes, and so while the special unicorn, and I say that about President Obama in not like a derogatory way, a unicorn in the way that it was unique and it was different and it comes around once in a lifetime, those same voters, I'm sorry, no matter what David Axelrod says, they're not showing up again in 2016. And so the Democrats need that white male vote to counter whoever the Republicans eventually put up.
I agree. I mean, this is, and I use the same term. I mean, people use unicorn as sort of a derogatory thing about Obama in terms of what his policies were like. Is that, they talk about, it's all fantasy, but in this, you could all, in the sense of who he was as a candidate, he's sort of almost this mythical creature that you will only see
absolutely
once in a lifetime, right? So, and that's the reason why he got the turnout model in 2008 that he did.
2008, right? And 2012 was not a turnout model that is anything to brag about for either party.
No.
Because Republicans didn't show up and Democrats didn't show up.
It's interesting because I point this out to people. Democrats lost 4 million votes between 2008 and 2012, and Republicans actually gained 1 million.
Right.
Which is not necessarily great, but it wasn't that fewer Republicans turned out. There was actually more Republicans that turned out in 2012 than there was in 2008. The problem was that there were so few of them that turned out in 2008, relatively speaking, that that rebound really doesn't mean much.
Right.
Those voters were not inspired. Neither party's voters were inspired. And
neither of them were. And what that has to do with the divisional politics that President Obama did. I mean, we just keep dividing yourself, is dividing ourselves, because if you make the other guy bad enough, then the people that were skeptical or on the fence, they're just not going to show up.
Right, exactly.
Because they don't know what to believe, and they're not going to show up for the other guy either. So they just don't show up. I mean, that's sort of the beauty and the evil of divisional politics.
Well, I don't want to get too far off from O'Malley. So this is a guy you can't. It's difficult to figure this guy out. Does he have money behind him in this race, by the way? I mean, I think Clinton's locked up most of the establishment money in this race, hasn't she?
Right. I mean, I think he's going for the Howard Dean model of raising money. That's going to be incredibly difficult because he's not a Howard Dean type candidate.
Right.
And the problem also for him is nobody knows who he is. I mean, he actually worked. This could actually work if he ran as himself, as the guy who I originally met 30 years ago, as opposed to this guy who is going to the left because that is the way the wind is blowing inside D.C. That is not the way the wind, and among activists, and well, they're the ones that do show up. In caucuses, and especially caucuses, but in primary elections. And so, I mean, I think he would have made the debate more interesting, and if he would have kept with more centrist values, because that's where most of the Democratic Party is. Most of the Democratic Party is not what you see on MSNBC.
Right. But that's how you get on MSNBC.
Isn't. I mean, these are my neighbors, right?
Right, but that's how you get on MSNBC. It's how you get on MSNBC, right?
Well, they're like caricatures, and or the extremist point. But nobody talks that way.
Yeah.
Nobody has those values. You would think that because that's what you see on MSNBC, and unfortunately, you're starting to see more and more on CNN. So it's and that's the problem for the Democratic Party, and turnout for them is going to be a huge issue, and I think they know that.
I think they do too.
That doesn't mean the Republicans will win, but they know they need to recreate themselves. Unfortunately, they believe that they need to recreate themselves by going more to the left.
That's the problem.
And they don't understand that they're losing more and more people by doing that.
We've only got about a minute left, Salena. What's coming up next for you at the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, triblive.com?
Well, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and I finally interviewed every single person running for president except for Hillary, because nobody's going to be running, because nobody's going to be talking to Hillary.
Right.
I'm going to be talking more and more about these blue collar issues and these jobs issues. I mean, the feedback that I got from that column was really sort of overwhelming and really interesting, and it's led to other stories that will show more examples of this. And I think the Republicans, as you said, they need to get on board and start talking about it. And I believe it's a central issue in this election cycle.
All right. Well, you can find out more at triblive.com with Salena Zito, and you can find out more what's going on with Salena on Twitter at Salena Zito Trib. It's on the screen. So if you're not following Salena already, you're a moron. So follow her now. Stop being a moron. That's called the hard sell, Salena.
Thank you so much for having me on, despite the 2 hiccups.
It's great having you on, Salena. We'll get you back on real soon. Thanks again.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Salena Zito has been my guest, and joining me now, my old radio partner. Not that he's old, just that we had a long radio partnership over the years at the Northern Alliance Radio Network. Mitch Berg, shotinthedark.info. And
it ain't the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah, no kidding. How have you been? I haven't talked to you in ages.
It has been a long time. I know. I'm doing very well. It's been an exciting couple of months here, and just keeps getting more so. So, by the way, I've got some stuff to bring you from a recently legalized country here. No, it's not what it sounds like. Our mutual friend of ours gave us some cigars I need to get to you here at some point.
Yeah,
so
Manny was on the show talking. Manny Laureano from the Minnesota Symphony Orchestra was on the show a couple of weeks ago, I think, or a week ago. I think it was last week, and we were talking about his trip to Cuba. So yeah, no, that's great. And I've got a couple of cigars there waiting for me. This is awesome.
Yes, you do. Yeah, so I'll have to work that out here. But yeah, so that's just one of many excitements going on in recent weeks here. So far so good.
How's the Narn going? I mean, you and Brad Carlson are still doing an excellent job over there. Excited to be doing the weekend shows still there.
Oh yeah, no, I've been saying it for years. You've been hearing me say this for probably 10, 11 years now, Ed. But the worst day on the air is better than the best day off the air, and that's not exactly true. There are other things in life that are pretty darn cool too. But yeah, we're still having a blast doing the Narn on the weekends. It still dominates weekend talk radio, like it always has. I mean, we've always been the single dominant show on weekend radio, which is when Twin Cities radio actually counts. So yeah, we're still cooking with gas. Absolutely.
Excellent. And I was on there not long ago, a couple months ago, I think it was, with King
That's right.
Banyan, and we did the show that we always wanted to do, which was the worst songs of the 1970s, and that was classic stuff.
Oh yeah, no, this is classic radio, and it may have been one of the landmark shows in the history of the Narn. And it's sort of free form, couldn't dare get away with it on public radio sort of thing. But it was just an absolute blast. We'll have to pick another decade to attack here coming up shortly. Well,
here, the 80s are
such a popular show.
The 80s are always a ripe target. We could come back to the 1980s.
Oh, good Lord, yes we can. I'm all ready to go for that one. We'll have to maybe arrange that one for this coming fall here to a sequel.
We are definitely going to do that. All right, so you've written a book, a novella actually, but I've looked at your Facebook page for this novella, and people are saying it's 300 pages and 90,000 words. So that's not really a novella. That's a
I originally wrote this as I started out as a complete lark on my blog, shotinthedark.info.
Yeah, I remember the
Trulbert
series.
Just a broad, ham-fisted spoof, and actually, someone in the comments section said, this looks like a Dickensian serial. And I thought, my gosh, it does. And so I just set this goal to write a chapter a week in my blog, starting last July, and I basically kept to that schedule. Some weeks were faster, some weeks slower. But I basically wrote a chapter a week for probably 8 months or so. And along about halfway through, I realized, I have an ending in mind for this now all of a sudden, and I kept writing towards that. And finally finished it probably in early March. And just basically because someone said it in the comments section. Anyway, I've written it. And it didn't look nearly that big when it was hidden on my blog over the course of 8-9 months. But now that I've got it all pulled out, proofwritten, and inserted into a Kindle-ready format, it's 280 pages of 8.5 by 11 single-spaced and 440 pages of Kindle. So it's turned into a much bigger book than I figured.
Is it 90,000 words? Is that right? 90,000?
93,000 words.
Oh my gosh!
Just for comparison's sake, War and Peace is 14,700. No, I made that up. But for National Novel Writing Month every November, they say 50,000 words is the target. And since you and I both are bloggers, you know how easy it is to just blast through a lot of words when you just start getting into the groove. And that's really one of the fun things about this was like everybody graduates with a BA in English. I've got it in mind to do a book. It only took me 30 years to get to it. And this was a very easy, accessible way to do it. I mean, once I started, I just couldn't stop. And here we are. And hopefully be fighting Hollywood away for the film rights in another week or two here.
Oh, that'd be all right. Now, the book is called Trulbert, a comic novella about the end of the world as we know it. Tell us about Trulbert. What's the setup here?
Well, the title doesn't explain it. Okay, no, everyone has heard of Ayn Rand's classic book, Atlas Shrugged.
Right.
And this book is built around the premise, what if the world shrugged first? We've all been through. I mean, this country is set up on this premise. This whole society that we live in, if you live in the United States, or really Canada for that matter, is set up on the premise that there's a tension between order and liberty. And ideally, according to what we learned in grade school and junior high civics, anyway, we're supposed to err on the side of liberty. And of course, there's big questions. Anyone who's been through a TSA checkpoint lately will tell you that we maybe don't swerve as much on the side of liberty and freedom as our ideals may suggest. But one of our favorite, one of your favorite political movements and mine, the anarcho-libertarians and some of the people who cling to the Ron Paul camp of the Republican Party, are fond of saying, boy, if we could just get rid of government, we would solve all of our problems. And what I thought I would do is explore the notion of what society would be like if we could, in fact, just have government disappear completely. What would happen? Would we revert to a Voltairean state of nature with a bunch of noble savages turning into gentlemen farmers, all mutually getting along with each other for our enlightened self-interest? Or would something else happen? And I analyzed this conundrum through the greatest analytical tool that God has given mankind, broad, ham-fisted satire. So that's really the setup of the book here. It's written from the point of view of a family man in South Minneapolis, a mild-mannered, middle-aged IT project manager who is just working his way through life, and with his wife and 3 kids, and a cast of hundreds of thousands in the Twin Cities here. Well, it could be any city, really. Any city from which suddenly, through a implausible and yet perfectly possible set of exigencies, government disappears overnight one night. And everyone has to find a way to make ends meet. And so I drew inspiration from 2 different books in sort of arriving at the plot that I went with. One of them was, of course, Kevin Williamson's classic, The End is Near and It's Going to Be Awesome, exploring some of the... if you haven't read the book, by the way, buy that one after you buy Trulbert, and read it, because it's one of the best books I've read in recent years. And the other book that I drew from was Lord of the Flies. And somewhere in between the two, the end is near and it being awesome, and the end is near and coming up with a Lord of the Flies type of scenario is sort of where the book lives. It sort of tells a scenario of humankind and dealing with the forces of human nature and good and evil, and doing it with tongue jammed so far into cheek that I actually have racked up some serious dental bills writing the thing.
So I'm trying to think of goodness gracious. Let's hope it doesn't come down to how things turned out for Piggy, but
yes, let's hope indeed. And but that's your job. You're the host this time. It's all I can do not to take over and start interviewing you. So take charge, man.
You know me. I like to let the guests talk. So you're telling a great story here. You're telling a great story. Do you have a hope in mind for this? I mean, obviously the hope for every author is just that people read the work. So I mean, I know that part of it. But is there a lesson that you want people to know from this?
Well, my hope for the book itself is that, given that I am as big a student and adherent to Murphy's Law as I am, I hope that nobody reads it and absolutely nobody buys it, and that I hope and pray that nobody from Hollywood starts throwing wads of $100 bills at me for the screenplay rights. That's purely playing to Murphy here. Well, what I would like is for people to read it, and the lesson I would like to take away is in my own ham-fisted satirical way, the lesson I want people to take away is that simple answers are seductive and almost invariably wrong. Yeah. Anyone who thinks they has a simple answer to life's vicissitudes, especially the ups and downs of dealing with our fellow human being with all of their infinite complexity, anyone who thinks that they have an easy answer for that, whether it's sloganeering like hope and change or whatever slogan you have, is fooling themselves, or more likely trying to fool you. That's the big lesson. It explores a world in which all of the simplistic slogans suddenly and through, again, implausible and yet perfectly realistic means come dramatically to life. Explores exactly what happens when all of these slogans roam free across the landscape and take tangible form. And that's really the overall lesson. Now, getting to that lesson is a 440-page romp through the Twin Cities and through the landscape of human nature.
There you go. All right. So you
I can't believe I just put it that way either.
I love it. I think it's great. Yes.
If we were in the studio, you'd be pelting me with rocks and garbage right now, which is why I'm glad this is a phoner.
It's a phoner. That's right. It's a phoner. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I'd be sitting there making faces into the camera like I've actually been doing the entire time that we've been talking. That's not true. That's not true.
I know. No, that's fine. That's fine enough. I'm not watching. Believe me, I know where my bread's buttered.
So this is self-published then, right? You're self-publishing this?
It is. It is self-published. It's out on Amazon. And just to go back to the other more serious answer to your previous question is, I do hope someone reads it. I mean, it's open for pre-orders right now, by the way, if you go to the link that you so graciously provided at Hot Air. You can actually pre-order the book. It's budget priced to move, as they all are when they're just ebooks.
Right.
And I do hope people read it. And as I have said with my blog, shotinthedark.info, for the past 13 years, if I write it for an audience of 3 or 4 people, I'll be perfectly happy. And if I've reached anyone at all, then life is good, and it's been a wonderful adventure. If I manage to reach an awful lot of people, that would be cool as well.
Right.
If it opens up some other avenues in terms of this sort of activity, more the merrier. And actually, that's been one of the interesting things about this exercise of writing. I mean, I've written millions and millions of words on my blog over the years, but never focused into a single story like this. And going through this effort for this last 11 months now has brought up a bunch of other ideas. I mean, it's brought 3 plausible book ideas to the point where I can honestly say they're in the pipeline and I'm working on them, and I actually have all the material for one book and most of the material for a second book pretty much ready to go. So
wow.
It's actually sort of incubated a lot of other ideas. And unlike Trulbert, some of them are not even just broad ham-fisted satire, although I'm not going to say it, but I'm not going to return to that because the third book in the series, fourth book, I should say, the third in the pipeline, Josef Skrbčić, American, the story of someone who learns English entirely by watching American TV in an Eastern European village and then comes to America, I'm thinking could mine some of that same satirical territory. But we're a couple years away from that one here, I think.
Well, certainly you want to push Trulbert forward here as well. Why self-publish? I'm curious. Did you think to go out? Did you think to go to a publisher with this, or is that really just something that you wanted to do as self-publish?
It is there's 2 answers to that, really. Yes, it's something I want to do. It's also very much the path of least resistance these days. I mean,
True.
It literally takes no effort to publish. Well, I mean, other than writing and editing, it takes no effort to publish a book.
We just assume the writing and editing part is complete by the time it hits that. But
Yeah.
You're right. There's low barrier to entry to market. Absolutely.
Yeah, once you have a product, it's something to sell that you think people might read. It's really easy to post something up there, and you don't have to go through the process of going hat in hand to a bunch of publishers and trying to convince them that there is a market for your product. And I was perfectly fine with that because I don't know that there is a market that a book executive is going to spend a lot of time and money trying to exploit for this particular book.
Right.
I hope to open that market up. And as the second answer to your question is, I do hope if it happened that Trulbert and the 3 follow-up titles that I'm working on here happen to sell enough to get a publisher's attention, well, so much the better. I will definitely go that route. There's one title I would very much like to get someone serious to publish, a book that I've been thinking about for years called An Accidental Conservative, which is more of a self-help book for people in grave doubts about their political leanings. I grew up as very much a liberal, became a conservative in college, became a libertarian in my 30s, and then came back to conservatism. So and I was going to draw heavily from material from the blog, obviously, but there's plenty more to do for that. But if self-publication opens the door to a publisher, so much the better. Or if it just happens that a lot of people are interested in what they see and flock to self-publishing, that could certainly work as well. My example there, of course, is my father, Bruce Berg, who has actually self-published 5 books since he retired, and has turned a profit on each of them. He's actually done print books every time, and financed it out of his own pocket, but then gone out and sold them, and has never taken a bath on any of them. He's certainly found a market for himself, and I'm not retired, and I won't be probably, ever. But so the path of lower resistance that you get self-publishing through something like an Amazon or a Lulu, or one of these other self-publishing services is certainly attractive, especially since I have a day job to work on.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, definitely attractive. All right, so again, Trulbert is the book. Let me go ahead and just pull this back up so we have the full title here. Trulbert, a comic novella about the end of the world as we know it. Very much priced to move on Kindle, $3.99. Definitely something that is very accessible for everybody, and you can pre-order it now. It will be out. When will it be published again, Mitch?
The publishing date is June 15th, a week from Monday. So if you pre-order now, you will beat the rush.
And it'll get downloaded automatically to your device anyway.
That's right. It'll download your device. You'll be all like this. You don't have to wait in line at Amazon for the crowds, and you'll be able to get your copy first. So absolutely.
You don't have to drive down to the Amazon store on June 15th. Wait, get the parking lot and try to figure out the way home from the freeway when during rush hour. You just do it now, and then it's all taken care of for you.
Absolutely. The crowds at midnight at Amazon, I'm told, are just absolutely barbaric, almost like the final half of Trulbert. Oh, I gave something away there. Shoot, I didn't want to do that. So.
Well, see, there you go, folks. The author is offering a hint. It's a good hint. All right, while I got you on the phone, Mitch, we'll come back and plug this one more time at the end. But I got to ask you about your thoughts on the presidential election so far. I mean, obviously, it's very early in the cycle. I'm not even sure we've seen everybody come into the even the Republican side. I'm not sure that we've seen everybody come in. But what are your thoughts?
You and I have been talking about this pretty much since the wee hours of the morning after the last presidential election.
Yeah,
this campaign really did kick off in earnest on November 3rd of 2012, or at least so it seems. I think that I'm looking forward to a real Donnybrook on the Republican side. Now, I will come out and say right now, I've been a Scott Walker supporter basically since 10 minutes after the last midterms, when he won his third election in 4 years by a convincing margin. There are so many things I like about Scott Walker, but this is one of those races where I don't at least here in the primary and caucus phase, I don't feel the need to hold my nose for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that I can get behind with a clear conscience. Walker and Jindal, if he gets in and he's making some noises that make me think it could happen. Rubio certainly has some attraction to him here. There's a few others I could probably get behind here, where I could see myself not having to grumble and harumph and think, okay, I'll soldier through this one here as well. Now the question remains: will the Republican Party at large be smart enough to follow suit? I will confess the fact that I'm underwhelmed with the possibilities of the generally accepted frontrunner Jeb Bush, although I could certainly be convinced. But that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. This is one of the rare races, as you can attest, having sat with me through 3 presidential races on the air, Ed, that I'm actually breaking with my own form and coming out for a candidate bright and early, which I've never done before, as you may recall, Ed.
Yep.
And because I do think Scott Walker is in so many ways the place the Republican Party needs to go. And is he perfect? No, and in fact, that's another of the themes of my upcoming ebook, Trulbert, a comic novella about the end of the world as we know it, I would like the people to also take away. That the idea that you can rely on a perfect politician to swoop in Deus Ex Machina and save the situation for you is just as mad as trying to suspend human nature. I think we've all seen political movements that are cults of personality in all but name, and I that's one of the things that concerns me about certain factions of, really both parties, but especially the GOP, since
Right.
that's where I'm identifying these days. So the idea of getting behind a cult of personality is, as we see a few of out there, strikes me as complete madness. But that's a long and confusing answer, isn't it, Ed?
No, actually, I think you've really hit the nail here on the head, which is that we have a lot of talent coming into this race. I'm like you. I like Walker. That's because that's more about proximity than anything else. I've seen Walker more than I've seen
Right.
some of the other candidates. But I like Perry. He got in the race today. I think you can make a case that Perry's got a good narrative that he can bring forth. I like Jindal. I like if you were to get Susana Martinez or Nikki Haley in the race, that would be interesting. Marco Rubio is one of the greatest natural politicians, one of the most articulate Republicans in the country, let alone running for president. He's
clean. Sorry, I couldn't. It's probably not a good. It's probably too soon to be making fun of Joe Biden. I'm sorry. You can edit that out in post production, right?
No, that wasn't. Oh, that was Biden. I was thinking it was Harry Reid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. My bad.
No, that's okay. I was thinking it was Harry Reid. I was just about to make a Harry Reid joke. So,
let's call it a Harry Reid joke.
We'll just call it a Harry Reid joke. Yeah, Harry Reid. Harry Reid said something
you're big enough to
similar.
rewrite history now, aren't you?
Yeah, well, Harry Reid said something similar, so I think it's all of a piece. But I mean, legitimately inspiring. There's a lot of people who can do well on the stump, and Scott Walker's definitely one of them. Rick Perry definitely is one of them. I'm not sure that anybody makes an emotional connection better than Marco Rubio does. And so, I mean, I think that's his value. The drawback is, one Senate term and that's it. And he was Speaker of the House in the Florida legislature, so he hasn't really had the executive experience yet. But but the point is, you're right. No one in this field is going to be perfect. But there are a lot of good options here, and I am just saying, keep the powder dry and make them work for it a bit, right? Don't.
Absolutely. Make them work for it. Hear what they've got. Hear them out in depth rather than jumping to knee-jerk conclusions, which I've avoided with all candidates.
Right.
I've let them either reinforce themselves or pay out enough rope for them to weaken themselves sufficiently, and see where they go from here. I mean, we've seen campaigns self-destruct on an epic scale in the past year, and I think we're going to see a few of those happen in the fairly near future here.
Yeah, I think some of them will just run out of gas. I mean, some of these things are just going to run out of gas. They're not going to gain any ground rhetorically. You're going to see people who have money wanting to start looking for people who are going to succeed rather than just be more or less a match for their own policy positions. And, that's the type of thing that you're going to start seeing in like August, September, October timeframe.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that's driven my decision, or at least my leanings so far, is that, and this is something we discussed on the broadcast when you were still on the broadcast way back when, is I've been leaning away from senators, as much as I like Rubio, as much as I love his story, as much as the son of a speech teacher, highly as I regard his rhetorical chops.
Yep.
Which, as you know from many rants on the subject on the air, is something that I put a fair amount of value in. I mean, it's sort of the family business.
Yep.
I after going on 8 years now of big vision and big promise, I want someone who actually has a demonstrable record of packing the gear as an executive. And that's why I've been I shouldn't say limiting, but focusing most on governors. And that's why my dream ticket would be a Walker Martinez, or a Walker Jindal, or a Jindal Haley, or maybe a Jindal Martinez, and a Walker Haley, one of those combinations. It
Sure.
occurs to me Jindal Haley would certainly be a big nod to our South Asian allies. But and maybe politically that would be a good move at this point as well, given our situation with China. Anyway, that's going very meta. But yeah, we have something that 8 years ago when we were talking on the broadcast didn't seem possible. A deep bench, which is kind of a
Right.
nice switch after a few of the campaigns we sat through.
A deep bench, and in the meantime, the Democrats are going with the next in line. It's like the parties have swapped positions here, and you've got a next in line at the end of an 8-year exhausted, 8 years in power exhausted party, where you've got, basically the John McCain of the Democratic Party is going to try to run for the third term. I mean, that's really what you're looking at with Hillary Clinton. She's the John McCain of 2016.
That's a great analogy, by the way. That's yeah, no, I love that. I'm going to have to use that myself here.
Yeah, feel free.
That's actually a brilliant analogy. But please, all of you pundits who are listening out there, if and when they nominate Hillary, and if and when she happens to lose, and express electorally the fatigue of 8 years in power for the left, for the love of all that is holy, please don't ever write an article speculating about the end of the Democratic Party, because that, again,
yes.
I'm a big servant of Murphy here, and that is the thing that will trigger a resurgence and an onslaught and basically doom us in the 2020s. So please don't go there, folks. Just don't.
I mean, you're a big fan of comedy, so I know that you know the Chris Rock routine. There is no sex in the champagne room, right? Right, you know this. You know this one, right? You know that routine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There is no permanent in the majority. There is no permanent in the majority. I don't care who you are. I don't care what the sign says. I don't care what the dancers say. There is no permanent in the majority.
That's right. That's right. No, that's true. And I along those lines, I would just like to say that if I could have $1,000 for every time one party or the other, some pundit or another, has declared the imminence of a permanent majority for one party or the other during my electoral life, which goes back years at this point, I could buy that Acura that I've been looking at on the lot here for cash. Just want to say.
Yeah. There ain't no such thing. It don't exist. Don't even try to achieve it.
And even by talking about it, not that I'm superstitious, I'm just a little stitious, and I just you're tempting Murphy in a way that human nature is just not designed to withstand or cope with. So just don't. Just say no.
Just say no. There is no permanent in the majority.
That's right.
There's no permanent in the majority. All right. So, and by the way, this is probably another theme that comes up in Trulbert, the comic novella about the end of the world as we know it, that you can buy from Mitch Berg on Amazon.com. And even if that theme is not in Trulbert, a comic novella about the end of the world as we know it, which is on sale on June 15th on Amazon and can be pre-ordered right now, well, there's still a lot of other great themes.
It's a first cousin of one of the main themes, which is all simple answers are wrong, including this one.
There you go.
That's right.
I always love those. I always love those self-refuting philosophies. I mean, it's just...
That's right.
It's like people say, you
too.
never say never. Well, wait a minute.
Look before you leap, except when he who hesitates is lost. How do you reconcile those? Two of my favorites.
It's like flammable and inflammable. They both mean the same thing. What the hell is that all about? But now I'm becoming Larry David.
That's right. And what's the deal with airline peanuts? They're not on a plane and they're not peanuts. No, that makes no sense.
Now, there was a chat room commentator here, a chatizen, who wanted to hear your Jim Cramer impersonation. And since I'm not in the same studio...
My first of all, let's be honest here. My Jim Cramer impersonation is like my Louis C.K. impersonation, almost entirely visual. And God help both of them for that being a fact. But if you like, you see, I think my impersonation runs something like this: bye, or chat room booyahs. Yeah, that's the other one.
There's also the Gilbert Gottfried one, which is my favorite.
Oh, My favorite, a reference to the classic 1980s alt rock band David and David. Yeah, I was like David, but I could never stand David. Well, fortunately for both of us, I don't look like Gilbert Gottfried.
Fortunately.
I have had people ask me if I am, in fact, related to Jim Cramer, which is a commentary on one or the other of us.
Or Louis C.K.
Or Louis C.K., and I'm not going to do my impression of him on your broadcast here, since I know it's a family podcast.
It is a family podcast. It is a family podcast. All right. And Mitch Berg is a family man, which is another theme that you can find in Trulbert, a comic novella about the end of the world as we know it, on sale
Yes, it is.
on June 15th on Amazon, but you can pre-order it right now for your Kindle. And the link is in the show post. The link to his website is in the show post, shotinthedark.info. My good friend and mentor in radio and all sorts of other things. I missed the partnership. I had a blast doing the show. I know you're doing a great job with the show. You've taken it in a terrific direction, and wishing you all the best. And we just got to hang out more often. That's all.
We ought to do that. Well, we have an excuse here. I'll have to meet up with you and the Stogies here sometimes too.
Oh, that's yeah. There you go. Now we have a mission. We have a mission. It's a Stogie mission. We've got to fulfill our Stogie mission. So there we go.
Absolutely. I'll have my people call your people.
That sounds good. Which means I'll call you or you'll call me. So there you go.
Pretty much, yeah.
Mitch, thanks so much for being with us today. And best of luck on the book. This is great.
Thank you very much, Ed, and thanks for the opportunity. And you have a great weekend.
You too, sir. Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Mitch Berg, the one, the only Mitch Berg. No one else would admit to being Mitch Berg. So he is the one and only Mitch Berg. There you go. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I think we have run out the YouTube experiment for the time being. I think next week we'll go back to Ustream and use the YouTube as the alternate when the show is not working. I know now how to get this thing set up and running. I have gone through some of the problems with YouTube. I haven't run into too many of them, which is nice. But I think it's nicer being in the Ustream format, and I think that it's a little less confusing for some of the viewers when I am in the Ustream format. So I think starting next week we'll go back to Ustream. But definitely we'll keep this in mind for the future in case we have other issues with Ustream. I think we're just missing some of the opportunity for some of the community in Ustream to watch the show and that sort of thing. So we'll probably migrate back there next week. I've been pretty happy though with the YouTube function, and now I know that I can do this when I need to do it. So pretty happy about that as well. All right, I want to thank the folks in the chat room. Oh, wait a minute. Before I do that, one last time, I'm going to be on the Hugh Hewitt show tomorrow, guest hosting for Hugh from 5 to 7 Central Time. That's 6 to 8 Eastern Time, 3 to 5, on the left coast. The final hour of the Hugh Hewitt show is always Dr. Larry, on Fridays, is always Dr. Larry Arnn, which Hugh is already taped for tomorrow. And so I'm only going to do the first 2 hours. And I don't know who the guests list is going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be awesome. So there you go. All right. And I see that a couple of people are saying back to Ustream is good. So we'll do that. We'll come back to Ustream, and hopefully it will be all okay. But after the issues a couple of weeks ago, I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to switch to something else in case the Ustream function did not return properly. And now I think we've got it all set up. So we're good. I want to thank the folks in the chat room. I especially want to thank Cranky T-Rex. He is actually writing for us occasionally at hotair.com. He's got a post coming up today. You'll find him under CT Rex. And he's just writing some really great stuff for us. And we're really happy that he's contributing as a guest blogger occasionally at Hot Air. And you're going to see more of his work. We gave a few new voices a try over the last couple of weeks. And I think by far and away, Cranky made the sale. He's doing good stuff. So you can find him there. You can also find him on his own blog, crankytrex.blogspot.com. He also writes occasionally for buzzpo.com. So be sure to check him out. And all of those different places, also on Twitter, at crankytrex. Everybody really should be following Cranky, but if you're not, at crankytrex is the Twitter handle. And I thought we had Pookie's girl as a troll gunner today, but I guess she had to split. Well, let's go ahead and pull up some walking music here. Put it up to a certain level so that you can hear it without it being overpowering. Who else has been in the chat room today? Don't forget to put your own URLs up in the chat room. We are all about shameless blog promotion here at the Ed Morrissey Show. Who else has been here? Well, we've got Guelph, Bob Knox, Fausta from faustusblog.com, a great Western Hemisphere blog. I read her every single day. So should you. A little known fact about Fausta, she's actually the person who invented YouTube. I don't know, it stuck for one there. Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be awesome? I'm telling you. Great stuff this week from Fausta, by the way, so you should check that out at faustusblog.com. As always, she's always got good stuff, but this week especially, there's a post up about the Nisman murder that you should read about. All right, so let's see. Who else has been here? Murray Hart for president. That must be T-Rand. Murray Hart for president. Mr. Fastbucks, my sister's brother, back with us. Paavo from Finland came the farthest to see the Ed Morrissey Show. She is, in fact, our diplomatic representative to the ABBA Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. One of these days, we'll get that diplomatic report from her. Who else? Thuja's here. Hey, that's great. Prairie Dog SD. Via Paso at the Ancestral Morrissey events. I love it. And the first mate behind me, keeping me on the straight and narrow. All right, folks. Don't forget, next Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Central, 1 on the left coast, back on Ustream for the Ed Morrissey Show. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. on the left coast. Guest hosting for Hugh Hewitt on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Don't miss a minute of it either way. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you then.